Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Solinsky, aka the Running Wine Mom. Joining us today is Samantha Garcia Gagnon, the owner of Bellies Inc. Samantha took the reins of Bellies Inc. in June 2020, right in the middle of the global pandemic. With a background as a highly experienced doula and the former president of the Doula Services Association of British Columbia, Samantha has supported countless families through their childbirth journeys. Originally from the Philippines, Samantha brings a unique culture perspective to postpartum care, emphasizing the importance of rest, nourishment, and community support. Under her leadership, Bellies Inc. continues to innovate and expand, providing essential products and resources to help new parents prioritize their healing and well-being. In today's episode, we'll dive into Samantha's journey from doula to business owner, explore the groundbreaking AB system, and discuss how Bellies Inc. is fostering a culture of self-care and inclusivity for all parents. So without further ado, welcome, Samantha.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to chat with you today. Nice
Yes,
name.
I know. And that's why I had to have you on. Samantha was another wonderful business that I met at the Create Her event in New York City. And I love that we are able to get to connect again. So thank you
Yeah,
for coming on.
super.
So to start each episode, we have our wine, and win of the week. This is where we share our favorite bottle of wine, vent about something that has been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victory. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So Samantha, what is your wine, WINE, of the week?
So, I'm not actually I'm more of a special occasion drinker, but my favorite wine that is my sort of go-to bottle that I'll pick up it's called Villa Teresa. It's a organic Prosecco, and it's just super delicious. I think I've probably been drinking it for about 20 years now.
Love that.
And then I also love our BC wine. So British Columbia has a really vibrant wine industry, but it
Ooh.
sells so well that often you can't buy BC wine anywhere else because it sells out locally. But they have a ton of different ones that I love, and the Laughingstock Gewürztraminer is a favorite there too.
Ooh, I
Laughingstock
will
Farm,
have to look
I think
into
that's what
it.
it's called. I know the label.
Yeah, I know. That's what it's always like. What color? I know the colors of the label. I have no idea what the wine is sometimes, but I know when I see it, I'm like, that's it. That's definitely it,
Yeah.
which is an important part of marketing, you know?
Totally.
So what is your WHINE of the week?
So I have a small team who works with me here at Bellies, and Chrissy is in charge of sending out all the orders because I hate packing orders. It's the least favorite part of that job, of this work, and she's been away for 2 weeks, so trying to
Oh
fit
no.
in shipping out all the orders has been a bit of a struggle, and I'm so much slower than she is. So that's a bit of a whine for me, is just having to have extra on the to-do list.
Ugh, the to-do list never does end, really.
Mm-hmm.
And with less people, it's so much more difficult. What is your win of the week?
The win of the week's a little bit of an odd one, I guess. It's not business related. My daughter has celiac disease, and when we found out, obviously a lot of what we ate changed because I didn't want her to feel left out. And one of the things that our family missed the most was wings, like just chicken wings.
Oh,
And we were
yeah.
able to find a pub 2 nights ago where we were able to have completely gluten-free, delicious chicken wings. And to see my
Ooh.
little 9-year-old's face of complete joy of eating some chicken wings,
I
that was
love
definitely
that.
my win of the week. When you have food issues, it's a big deal to be able to have those moments, especially when the food
Yeah,
issues is your kid.
I know. And you want them to be happy and be able to
Totally.
eat everything, and then you have
Yeah.
to be saying you can't. So I always like to ask my guests, what is one significant challenge you've successfully navigated, shaping your journey to where you are today? And what accomplishment are you most proud of in your life?
Sure. Well, I originally from the Philippines. I lived there until I was 18, and then I moved to the UK for university. And then when I was 21, I moved to Canada to get married to my high school sweetheart. And it sounds very sweet, but the reality of having to move country twice in a very young age and essentially have no family here, no community here, no friends here, and having to really rebuild a whole life was really hard. There's so much that I made mistakes with and some things that I wish I could have done a little bit different. But then to now look at it, I think I moved here in 2007. And so to be able to look back all these years later and see what a huge community I've been able to build,
Mm-hmm.
both professionally and personally, makes me really happy. Like, I'm very proud of having to go through all that scary stuff,
Right.
because it really made me much more outgoing. I've always been outgoing, but like in a more vulnerable way, because I feel that's
Mm-hmm.
how real friendships are formed. So that definitely, and then things I'm proud of. I mean, I guess everyone's going to say their family, right? And that is true. But I think what I'm really proud of, just sort of on a personal note beyond my family, is the fact that I was able to build a life where I feel like I've got as close to a balance as is humanly possible. It's not possible to be completely balanced. There's always going to be, things are always going to sort of be uneven. But I was able to build a successful enough career where I make my own hours. I get to pick up my kids from school, drop them off at school. I get to take days off when they have a field trip, and I get to be really, really involved in my kids' life. So I feel like I have a really wonderful, like, best of both worlds, where I get to make the decisions in regards to where I'm going to be when, which is a really big privilege.
And that I think is every business owner's dream, to do
Mm-hmm.
that, to be able to have that balance instead of and see your family instead of missing it, which is
Totally.
it's amazing. So the running wine mom, we start off with a little fitness. I always like
Mm-hmm.
to ask my guests, what is your favorite way to stay active?
Yeah. So growing up, I was in every single varsity, and then I dislocated my knee at 14.
Oh
And that
no.
was a really hard thing to get over, because I had gone from being this very active person to now anytime I would try activity, I would injure myself. And it wasn't small injuries, they were big reoccurrences. And so that really frightened me and scared me for a very long time, that like the fitness side of my life basically disappeared for a long time. And then after I had my last kid, I mean, it would be on and off, right? But after I had my last kid, and I found out I had PCOS, so polycystic
Hmm.
ovarian syndrome, and I realized, like, I was in so much pain all the time, that the real way that I can actually help my body is if I figure out how to eat for PCOS and I move my body for my PCOS. And so once it became about not being in pain because of the PCOS, and became more, and not about just aesthetics, which it was always my whole life, especially being a bigger bodied person, um, it really shifted how I looked at exercise and fitness, to being one that didn't feel like this thing I had to do, and more. I still don't enjoy it, I'll be honest. I don't get endorphins from working out, but now it's just part of my life, which before felt like a struggle, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
So, favorite
Yeah.
way, I am a gym person. I enjoy going to the gym, putting my headphones on, not talking to anybody, going on the treadmill, lifting weights. And then outside of the gym, we love going for walks. And I live in British Columbia in Canada, which has the most beautiful outdoors. So in the summer,
Hmm.
we do a lot of kayaking and hiking and swimming. So that's my favorite type of activity.
That's wonderful. And I totally relate because I also have PCOS. So as you're saying all of that, I feel as though growing up in my teens and early 20s, it was so much about working out to just get to look a certain way. And
Mm-hmm.
then after I got married, I was diagnosed with PCOS once we started kind of looking into, having babies and
Yeah.
stuff. And I'm so thankful for it in a way because it taught me about eating in a different
Mm-hmm.
way and about working out in a different way. And now
Mm-hmm.
it is such like a just something I kind of don't even think about. And I
Yeah.
don't care if I'm working out for 20 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, just moving your body in the ways that work best with your body, I think is so important. And a lot of people don't really kind of connect that because they are always working towards a number on the scale or the way, that their pants
Yeah.
fit or
It
something.
definitely felt like a freedom when I got
Yeah.
my diagnosis, because, like I said, I've always been bigger bodied. Not necessarily when I was young. I think that was more because I grew up in the Philippines, where as a mixed race person, I was always just naturally bigger than a full Filipino person.
Right.
And so I always looked bigger, even though in reality I wasn't.
You weren't. Yeah.
But then that same mentality still stays there. And then once I got the diagnosis, it was like, oh, that explains so much. And then
Mm-hmm.
it really made it like, I don't want to be in pain. And so if I don't want to be in pain, if I want my cycles to be regular, then this is just my life. It's not a
Right.
short-term thing. It's not until I lost so many pounds.
Mm-hmm.
This is just my life.
Yeah.
And that
And
gave a
for the
lot of
long,
freedom.
yeah, and for longevity, just in general, it's such
Hmm.
a good thing for us to be moving our bodies and to
Totally.
know that you have to regulate feeling good.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a double-edged sword, but it's
Hmm.
good, you have to do it to feel good, but you're gonna have longevity, which is great.
Yeah.
So how does maintaining your fitness routine contribute to both your motivation and your understanding of the relationship between mental health and physical health?
I mean, I think, because of the PCOS being my sort of main focus,
Hmm.
I know my body is very quick at telling me when I'm not following my proper protocols. So
Hmm.
as soon as it gets off, I feel it mentally, I feel it physically. My pains come back, my cycles go wacky, and so for me, it's very obvious, right? Like it's the symptoms are like scream at me. Yeah, I can't go too long off course because then my body gets mad.
Yeah, totally can understand that. So let's move into parenthood. Tell us about
Hmm.
your family.
So I've got 3 kids. I am married. So I've been with my husband since I was 15. So that's a little
Oh,
crazy to think about because I'm
crazy.
38 now. So
Oh
I've
my
been
gosh.
with him longer than I've been without him, which is a really wild thought.
Oh,
And I have 3 kids. My eldest is 12. Then I have a almost 10-year-old in a couple of weeks, and then a almost 6-year-old in about a month. And we also have a little dog, so she's of
oh,
course part of the family. Yes, that's. And I also have my mother-in-law who lives with us, so we are a multi-generational
love
household.
that. And probably helps a little bit in the
Yeah, she's
parenting
very
aspect.
helpful. Where it's definitely got more positives than negatives. It is
Hmm.
a very interesting to raise a child, to raise your children with a third parent who you did not
Hmm.
choose to be an
Yeah.
additional parent to your kids and has different parenting beliefs and parenting styles. But for the most part, she's very respectful of our choices, so it's mostly great.
Good. So besides having a third parent, what were you least prepared for in parenthood?
I think probably the thing I was most unprepared for was the mental load of having to manage, being the house manager, I guess.
Hmm.
No matter how proactive or hands-on your partner may be, I always believe in every relationship there is always going to be that one parent, typically the woman, but or like the maternal figure, but not always. But there's always going to be one parent who takes on that
Yeah.
mental load in order to make things run. And so that's definitely been the hardest part for me, is because I'm already, I think a bit. I do have a bit of anxiety, and so to add sort of anxiety just within on top of having anxiety for your whole family,
Yeah.
that's been a challenge for sure. And like learning how to quiet the mind when it's not needed is hard.
It's hard. It is very hard. What do you think your parenting style is?
I don't know if there's like an actual name for it. I think I parent with communication and connection as the lead. I know that my kids. I know I've got 3 really great kids who try really hard to be themselves, but also,
Mhm.
try to keep us happy. I'm a bit of a stricter parent for sure. Like I think you can definitely see that we're a mixed race family and that different sort of parenting styles from the cultures come through in different ways. I'm a lot stricter than a lot of my kids' friends, but I'm not like mean strict. It's always just
Mhm.
here are our boundaries, here are the rules within our family. And my kids, for the most part, are pretty great at working within those. And when they're not happy with it, they're very good at explaining their reasons why. And sometimes we will adjust it depending on how those conversations go. But yeah, I guess communication and connection is our sort of focus when it
I
comes to
love
our
that.
kids.
That's great. It's so important, communication
Thanks.
and connection, because without communication, you can't have the connection.
Yeah,
So
I
it's
think a lot of
very.
times people underestimate the power of their children's
Hmm.
thoughts. And a lot of times people, parents will sort of just disregard it as, oh, they're just little, they don't know. And while they may not know what we know, they have their own thoughts, they have their own feelings. It never dictates how we choose to proceed, but
Hmm.
we want them to feel like they're an important part of our family. And so we need to have those conversations so that everyone at least feels heard. You might not get your way still,
Yeah.
but we'll hear what you have to say
Yeah.
and then discuss it further.
Yeah. And it does make them feel heard,
Mhm.
whether or not you get the answer that you want. And what is one piece of advice you would give to other parents?
I think, it's sort of connected to my last answer is always keep talking to your children.
Hmm.
Set up situations where those conversations happen easier. Nothing formal, but like having those moments in the car, asking those like opening questions, not how was school. It's got to be like more open-ended questions that can kind of dig a little bit deeper, because the more that your children talk to you, the more you'll understand them and their behaviors. And I always believe that every bit of behavior is a symptom to something else. So if your
Hmm.
children are acting a certain way, there's something else going on. And that's just a symptom. We need to figure out what is going on inside their
Right.
brains in order to be able to proceed, right? So always having those conversations and spending time together, even if it's just going to the grocery store, like really just making sure you have to, especially when you have multiple kids, like having those one-on-one time together, um, it does make a difference, I think, in parent relationships.
Awesome. All right. Well, let's get into the main event. We're going to talk about Bellies Inc. And can you tell the audience about your business?
Sure. So, excuse me, Bellies Inc. is your home for pregnancy and postpartum products that are focused on comfort and healing. So that's really sort of what our main focus is on. It's all things that are going to help make you feel better, because a lot of pregnancy and postpartum does not feel so great.
No.
So we want to be there to be a like both a resource and like having the actual tools to make it feel better for you.
Yeah. And can you share a bit about your background and what inspired you to originally become a doula?
Sure. So when I had my first baby, I went with the close my eyes and pretend nothing's happening and they'll take care of me. I have doctors, they'll take care of me, they'll tell me what I need to do. But that is not in line with who I am as a person. I'm the type of person who like over researches. Like I knew more about what vacuum I was going to buy for my house than I did about my birth. I did lots of
Mm.
research in regards to the baby, so I had all my
Hmm.
thoughts on the baby, but I had no thoughts on the actual birth and about myself and my own care. And then the birth happened and everything went fine, but I look back at that birth and I thought, what the heck was that? Like, I did not feel like an active participant in my own birth.
Hmm.
And
Right.
I felt like I was just there for the ride. And that's not who I am. And so when I got pregnant with my second baby, I had switched over to midwifery care because I knew I wanted more. Like, the doctor was there that night. I had never met him before, the night of my first baby. And so
Yeah,
with my
that's
second
gorgeous.
baby, I was like, I want to really know who's catching my baby. So I went to midwifery care. I started reading everything that I could. So I went like sort of the complete opposite. That's the midwife suggested maybe look into home birth, and so I looked more into that. And then I actually did my doula training when I was pregnant not because I wanted to become a doula, but because I thought, okay, they've got some magical powers, so I'm going to go to this doula training. I'm going to learn all this magic,
Yeah.
and then I went on to have my birth, and I had actually had two doulas with me this time. While the birth didn't go how I had hoped, how I felt after was vastly different. How I felt
Hmm.
after was like I really felt in charge here, and like this was my birth. Like
Right.
I felt like I led the way here. And so it was actually only a few months later that I went to my first birth, and it was a really long, difficult one that ended kind of scary. But I left that birth knowing that I had found the thing that I had wanted to do.
Hmm.
I always felt like I was a caring person. I always wanted to, when I was a kid, I used to joke, my grandfather told me like, oh, you should become a nurse. And I said, no, that's not me. I said, if I can just love and take care of people and not have to do any of that medical stuff, then that's great.
Right.
And I didn't know what a doula was at that time. I don't know if there was even very many at that time. But then when I started douling, I was like, yeah, at the end of the day, what I do is I take care of people and I love them. And yes, there's a lot of medical stuff to know, but I'm not actively doing that medical stuff.
Right.
And I also knew I wanted to not go back to my regular job. Like I was in marketing for many years before I had my second baby, and I knew I didn't want to go back to that. I took my maternity leave. So in Canada, we get a year maternity leave. And I
Amazing.
just worked and worked and worked. I went to as many births as I could so that I could feel confident in not returning back to work after my maternity leave was over. And I never worked for anybody else ever again after that.
Right. That's
Yeah.
awesome. I love that. That's great. I love your story for that. So how did your experience as a doula kind of prep you for taking over Bellies Inc?
Sure. So I had always been familiar with Bellies. So Bellies sort of started around the time that I started dueling. And Kim Vopney, who on Instagram is known as the Vagina Coach, many of you might know her. She's got a very large following. Kim was one of the original owners of Bellies Inc. And Kim and I had have done lots of work together. So we used to run these pregnancy events, and they were really great. And so I always knew of Bellies Inc. I always knew of the products. I always referred my clients to them. So it was already a product that I really loved. And when Kim approached me, she said that she was thinking about selling Bellies, but she just wanted to find a buyer who knew about birth and knew about postpartum and was great at marketing and loved business, someone like her friend Sam. And then her friend told her, well, why don't you ask your friend Sam? So she did. And at that point, I was now 3 kids in. The pandemic had just started practically. And I knew I could not keep up going to births at the level that I was going. I used to do, 4 births roughly a month. That was really hard for my family. I don't know how I did it through so much of the baby and little toddler years. But I knew I couldn't keep up going to births that much and being on call that much. And so when Kim offered it to me, I was like, well, it's a product I already love. There's no limitations in regards to how I can grow this business. And I won't have to be on call anymore. And it's still in birth and postpartum, which is where my passion lies, right? So it just felt like the perfect
Oh my gosh, yeah.
match.
It has everything. Your birthing and your marketing. Like, what else could you kind of ask for? Which brings me to, what challenges did you face when kind of transitioning from your doula practice to running Bellies?
Yeah. So, I mean, a few different things. Like, definitely, like, I'd been in a service-based business for so long. And even marketing is essentially a service-based business. Like, yes, there's a product that you deliver, but essentially it's a service. And to now having a product, and product-based business is a completely different ball game. So it was really like jumping in with 2 feet and hoping that I don't make too big of a mess. And really just trying to figure it out as I go. My other challenge was, when Kim owned it and the other 2 as well. One of the other owners was also named Samantha. Have you heard of so many Samanthas in one space? And then Julie. When they owned Bellies was because they were all fitness focused. Bellies was very much a fitness focused brand. Everything was kind of skinny, fitness, white woman. And here I was coming in as a plus size, mixed race person who was not a fitness expert. I'm not a fitness expert, but I was like, how can I then step into this space when I'm not fitness and that's not who their clients are? And, so that felt like a really big challenge. And a lot of it, like, I had a lot of self-doubt just in like, who's going to buy a product like with so much fitness focus from a woman who's fat? Like, I really had these really big struggles. And, I sort of just brought it back and like, this is not a fitness product. This is not just for people who did fitness before they gave birth and they want to continue after. This is for everybody who's, got a pelvic floor and got a uterus and has an expanding abdomen, everyone who's giving birth. And so it's not actually fitness at all. Like, yes, we do have pelvic floor exercises that come with the product. But that's not exclusive to people who
Right.
love
Every
fitness.
woman should be doing that when
Exactly. So I
they or
really
goes to the
had to
gym.
sort of switch the whole narrative surrounding the
Mhm.
business.
Yeah.
And that's hard because it was so closely connected to Kim,
Right.
especially. So really having to shift it to being about from being about Kim and fitness to being about me and pregnancy and postpartum and really just proper healing, which I think everyone
Right.
deserves to experience.
Yeah, and that's kind of what the now when you do look at the website and your values, it is so much about focusing on self-care for
Hmm.
postpartum. So what are some other ways that you kind of promote this
Yeah.
through Bellies? How do they support it?
So one of the things that I say I love most about particularly the ab wrap and the ab system is that it
Mhm.
gets new parents to take a moment every day to think about themselves, right?
Mhm.
Because in that
Mm.
immediate postpartum, our whole focus is on our babies. What our babies need, our babies poops, our babies feeding, our like all the things baby, right? That we kind of forget about ourselves and do very little to take care of ourselves beyond maybe a shower. Like
Right.
that's oftentimes the
Yeah.
extent.
Maybe if a shower.
But when we are able to, take time to put our wrap on, constantly wearing the wrap, so that's a constant like reminder of that self-care that you're putting in, and then taking a bit of time every day to do the pelvic floor exercises that come with the ab system and the ab wrap, it naturally will put people into this space of I'm allowed to take some time to take care of myself too.
Mhm.
And I really hope that, because they're starting in the beginning from like that first week of taking care of themselves, even just a few minutes a day, that this just becomes what parenthood is for them. That
Right.
parenthood for them is, yes, the kids are always sort of the focus and the priority and the biggest thing. And I also get to have time to take care of me. So
Right.
beyond, doing the ab wrap and the core confidence program, like really making I also teach prenatal classes out of our Bellies community space.
Oh.
And a big thing that I always talk about is really learning how to accept help and how to also ask for it. Because
Mhm.
so often I'll hear people say, okay, where's the village? No, where's this
Right.
village? The village will not show up. You have to ask for it. You have to tell them. And so
Right.
often we have this like shame or this fear of like when someone says, "Oh, let me know if I can do something for you." We'll say, "No, it's fine. I'm fine." They're not saying that. They're not offering it because like for fun. They're offering
Yeah.
because they mean it. They just don't know maybe what you need, right? And it can be
Right.
hard. I will admit it's hard to think, what do I actually need? That's why I encourage people to instead, if you're offering help to somebody, be specific about what that help is. Don't say, how can I help? Like, let me know if there's anything I can do. Because when you're in postpartum, you're in like this
Yeah, you're
fog.
not
You
thinking about
can't
it.
think.
Yeah.
But as someone who's doing the offering, be very specific. I'd love to come by your house to drop off a meal. Can I come over and clean your bathroom? Like these are things that we really need help with postpartum.
Right.
And when someone offers it to you as the parent, say yes. Like unless you dislike that
Right.
person, obviously, don't say no to that.
Yeah.
But if you like the person enough that you're welcome, you want them in your home, then learn how to say yes, because saying yes is not a failure. It
Mhm.
is really a big win to be able to like release that need to control everything. That's a real big win.
Yeah. So can you explain what the AB system is, like how it exactly works and what
Sure.
makes it unique compared to kind of other postpartum recovery products?
Okay, so the ab system is made up of our ab wrap and then our two ab tanks plus the core
Mhm.
conference program. So I'll sort of go backwards. So the core conference program is an 8-week pelvic floor exercise program. You're not doing any crazy squats or anything like that.
Right.
There is some squatting, but towards the end. But it's really a gentle program that helps you be able to rehabilitate your pelvic floor and your core. You're
Right.
doing this in the first 8 weeks postpartum because studies show that in that first 8 weeks after you give birth, your body is doing the most amount of healing by itself. So we want to
Mhm.
take advantage of those first 8 weeks because where you're at the end of the 8 weeks is where you're going to stay in 3 months, in 3 years, in 10 years, if you don't do anything to, properly rehabilitate, right? So really taking advantage of those first 8 weeks will make such a big difference. Like, so many times people think, oh, you can't do any kind of exercise until 6 weeks. That's not true. You can't do
Right.
intensive exercise, but pelvic floor work is so important. And I think don't look at it as exercise, just looking at it as more like a rehab or like reconnection of your pelvic floor and abdomen. Then we have the ab tanks. So the ab tanks are essentially, I don't know, are we having the camera on? If we are, I'll show it to you. But
Yeah, it's on. Yeah.
okay, the ab tank is essentially, these are tanks. So
Okay.
they're cut below the bust, which makes it really great for skin to skin and for breastfeeding. And they're worn as the base layer of the ab wrap. They have a very gentle compression. So a lot of times people will sort of start with that in the beginning if they're not feeling totally confident to wrap on day one, especially if they've had like a C-section. And then oftentimes people will wear this as long as they're nursing because it's a great base layer shirt. And then you wear the ab wrap over top. So the ab wrap is it's a gentle sort of wrap around your abdomen and your hips. That's breathable and movable. Like it's not a tight constrictive wrap like you probably sort of imagine most postpartum bands are like, or most postpartum wraps are like. So you don't want any kind of wrap or band that's going to squeeze just the center of your body, which honestly most wraps out there do, even the ones that are really designed for postpartum. Most don't have the knowledge behind it to be designed properly. So they squeeze in the center, focusing on trying to get your waist a little bit smaller. But what happens is all those internal organs get pushed downwards. So you get a downward pressure, which feels really uncomfortable, number one.
Yeah.
And if you've got any type of prolapse, can either make it worse or can make it an actual issue, right? So you don't want downward pressure. You don't want too tight. What you want out of a wrap is something that's going to give you lift, that's going to feel like a gentle hug, that you're able to move around in, and that's breathable. And so the ab wrap's got all of those things. It's put on from the bottom up so that you're getting that lift. It covers, it gives support to both your abdomen and your hips, so not just the center. You're really getting total support. And you're able to move around with it and sleep with it and all that stuff. So it's very, very comfortable to wear. So essentially the idea behind belly wrapping is, if you think about any time that we injure our bodies, right? Let's say you sprain your ankle. The doctor's going to say, okay, let's wrap it with a tensor band so that you're not going to injure it worse. So it brings down swelling, so it heals properly. And then we're going to do some rehab after. Why don't we get the same thing for our abdomen and our pelvic floor? When we're pregnant, our abdomen separates, right? Well, some studies say 100% of people, obviously at varying degrees, but your abdomen begins to separate. So this is called diastasis recti. And then your pelvic floor, if we think of it like a basket that's got like a nice tight wove, as you know, you add more fruit to your basket as your baby gets bigger, that weaving starts to separate. Not like separate complete, but like it just loosens and softens all the relax and all that stuff in order for you to be able to have your baby. So it doesn't matter whether you're having a vaginal birth or a cesarean birth, your abdomen and your pelvic floor will be impacted. So we want to have that external support to bring down the swelling, to make you feel more comfortable. It helps with back pain. It helps the muscles heal in better alignment. It's not going to cure any DRA. It's not going to cure diastasis recti, and any wrap that says it does is a liar. It's got to be that combination of the external support with the internal rehab that you get from the Core Confidence program. So that's really what makes us super, super different from everything else out there. It's designed by proper professionals. It's really comfortable to wear. It's focused on healing and not aesthetics. And it comes with the exercises so that you're really getting a full, well-rounded, like proper healing experience.
Yeah. And I am actually like, my gosh, I never connected like when you hurt your ankle, you have to wrap it. Why are we, and I'm like, as you're saying this, I'm like, why have I never connected that at all? I cannot believe. And why is it not just, again, you should have this? Like, yeah, I did have like a Velcro wrap that the hospital gave me, which was way too big for me. I had 2 C-sections and I didn't know really if it was like I was using it properly. They just said, wear this when you go
Yeah.
home. I feel as though everything you're saying is everything that we should be
Doing.
doing. And even as you were saying, think of it as not as exercising, but as kind of like physical therapy
Yeah.
type recovery. Again, why are our doctors not giving us this? And in any other surgery that we would get a list of things that we should be doing or
Hmm.
appointments that we should be doing. And it's just, I know everybody knows it and we've talked about it. Like, it's just not, the standards are not
And if
there
you
for us.
have knee surgery, your doctor sends you home with a pretty big long list of things that you do.
Right.
After a C-section, you see them at 6 weeks, get the all clear,
Right.
and they tell you don't drive, don't carry heavy things. And that's basically the end of your postpartum care when it comes to C-section recovery. And when it comes to vaginal birth, there's no
Right.
tips. Because well, it came
It's
out your
so
vagina, so you're
crazy.
good. Like, no,
Right.
like that it came out my vagina too. Like that's a
Yeah,
lot,
that's
like,
a
but
lot.
there's
Normally,
no tips for either.
I know, and it is something again that a lot of women are trying to figure out as they're
Mhm.
going through postpartum when
Yeah.
they're having these issues and they don't have the time to look stuff up or try and figure out what is
Hmm.
this problem happening because I have a child that I'm trying to keep alive and it is gosh, the whole thing is
I
just
wish I could get my ab wraps into every hospital.
I know, me too.
That's a
I hope that
goal.
is it will happen. So in addition to all of the wonderful things that that the ab wrap does for women and the core exercises too, you also support a lot of causes and inclusive of all bodies and identities, which I
Mhm.
loved reading that on your website. So why is this advocacy important to you and your team?
But, I think, like, yes, I have a team. It's a very small team. We're
A
all made
team.
up. It's essentially me and two friends plus a bookkeeper. But all of us are moms. And that was very important to me that I wanted to hire people who needed to have time for their kids.
Right.
And with my business, I'm like, you need that time off 100%. I will never say no to you. It's for your kid. You don't even need to tell me. That's like, and I think, as a feminist business owner, I think that that's a big part of it is being able to make work like achievable for moms because we
Right.
have these extra things that we have to think about, these extra people we have to think about. But in regards to, why so much of my work and with Bellies is also sort of going beyond just the products and like trying to help people, particularly people from different, more marginalized communities, is because of how I grew up and who I am as a person, right? Like, I think Bellies is a really good reflection of myself and my story. I grew up mixed race with a father who was very brown and was oftentimes told to go back to, where he came from and all that stuff. I mean, we grew up in the Philippines, so it wasn't bad, but when we were visiting other places, so he definitely had some tough experiences that I got to witness. I'm white presenting, so I don't get it to the same degree as my father does. Though I've certainly been told to go back to where I come from many times
Ugh.
just from my voice. I guess people can kind of tell that I'm from somewhere. They don't know where, but I think most people think I'm Latina. And so, I have experienced things to that to some degree, not to like the
Mhm.
degree of my father. And I have my family is very diverse. I have two brothers who are gay, and so LGBT rights are very important to me because that's my
Right.
family. So
Right.
when I'm fighting for women, when I'm fighting for diversity, being a big-bodied woman, like these are all reflections of myself
Mhm.
and my family and the diversity that's within my family. So it's things that I try to support. I mean, our main supports are for organizations in the Philippines because while I live over here, my heart is really over there. My whole family still lives in the Philippines, and so we try to support a lot of birthing spaces because birth within the system in the Philippines is quite horrific for a lot of
Mm.
people, particularly the marginalized folks. And so to be able to financially support these organizations makes me really happy. And then
Right.
on a local sort of sphere. When I needed to get out of my house for the business because we were just going too fast, and I got an office space. I knew I didn't just want somewhere that held my products. I knew I needed to be more than that, and so we opened the Bellies community space, which you can kind of see a little bit of here.
Oh, so
But our
nice.
Bellies community space is located in Pitt Meadows in British Columbia, which is where I live. And we host by donation breastfeeding classes, by donation our
Wow.
postpartum support groups that meets every month. We have lower cost prenatal yoga, baby and me yoga. We do that like 3 to 4 times a week.
Right.
And we have other classes as well that we're able to offer. And when possible, like we always try to make it as low cost, free, or we always try to do it by donation. We never do anything
Right.
for free unless if you say you can't afford, then you're always welcome. We'll never say no to
I
anybody.
know.
But to be able to have a space like this where the families who have come through our space and the friendships that have been made and the community has been built, and how that's gone way beyond just our
Mhm.
four walls, like to see their photos, and they're sharing photos of their kids growing up and going to each other's
Yeah,
birthdays, and they all met in our space. And
I
so to be
love
able
that.
to see these true friendships and this true community, which is really what I talk about all the time, about how like parenthood cannot be a solo thing, like it has to be community based. It's so wonderful to like see it in real life and within my own community, right? Like, yes,
Right.
of course, it's great to see all the stuff that's happening in the organizations in the Philippines, but I don't get to see that day to day. Here, I
Right.
live in a small community where I walk around and I see these babies and these moms, and that makes me really happy. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, like that's something I'm very proud of that we've been able to do for Bellies,
Yeah,
or because of
I'm like
Bellies.
everything you're saying, I'm like, "Oh, I love that you're doing that." Like, I think I love that this community part of it maybe the most of
Yeah.
everything you've talked about
And
just because
most of our customers have no clue that this is what we also do,
right, because
because it's
it's
not
it
about that. I'm not doing it so that customers think I'm nice and want to buy from me. I'm doing
right.
it because I have Bellies, because I have all these amazing customers who buy from us, who refer to their friends, who let people know about our product. Yes,
Mhm.
we're helping them with our products, but they're able
But
to
you can
make it possible for me to be able to have this space, because without
right.
Bellies, there's no way I could afford a space in one of the most expensive places in the world
Yeah, right.
to have these spaces for community and for families, right? So it all sort of works together. Like, this is my heart filling part of my
Right.
work, is the families who I get to work with.
Yeah, and it is such a great thing that a woman doesn't have to think about how much they can afford to
Yeah.
come and do this. They are getting the experience that they deserve
Hmm.
postpartum and at without the worry of, well, I can't afford this, so I can't go do it.
Yeah. Our
And
donation
I
is
think that
minimum donation of $5. So for
right.
most people, that's totally reachable. And like I said, if you can't do that, then don't do that. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to send a donation if you don't want to. I only started the donation thing, number one, so we could send more money back to the Philippines. And number two is because I noticed that when people pay even $5, they're more likely to show up. If
Right.
they don't
Yeah.
pay, then it's easier to say, "Oh, I'm tired
I'll
today."
just zip it.
And
Yeah.
then they miss out, right? So
Right.
yeah, that's why it
That's
got
great.
started.
Yeah, no, I really do love everything about that. I wish more communities have that, and hopefully one day they will. Which, speaking of, on to the next question, what are your long-term goals for Bellies?
So, we like over the last year, we've added a ton of new products. That was really sort of my focus last year. And this year, my goal is really to just try to get into more indoor places, actual
Mm-hmm.
places. So my focus is so much more on like being found in your local stores and stuff like that, because I know that people want to see the product in person. It's very hard to buy a product online that's supposed to fit
Right.
you and just hope that it works, particularly for our US buyers, because there's of course the extra worry of like customs and shipping and all that stuff. And so while we keep shipping as low as we possibly can, and there is free shipping over $125, it's still a wait and all that stuff. So I'd
Mhm.
love to be able to get into more baby stores across the US and across Canada. That's really my big goal over the next year, just so it's so much more accessible for people. So if you're
Right.
listening and you have a baby store or you have a favorite baby store, please tell them about Bellies Inc.
Yeah, and I'll have to figure out, how do you even do that? If you do have local stores, how do people kind of say, well, you should have this product?
They literally just have to go to the owner and say, I love this product. Can you bring it in?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't know it was that easy.
It's that easy.
That's
And
awesome.
like
Okay.
obviously like they'll look and see if that's feasible, but that's where a
Right.
lot of our interest comes from, where someone says, "Oh, I had a client asking for this. Can I get information on your wholesale program?" Um
Okay.
yeah.
All right. That's good to know. How about, are there any upcoming projects or products that you're
Well,
thinking about?
I am hoping. Well, we are gonna launch our Booby Besties, which is essentially just some breastfeeding focus stuff. But I'm also really
Fun.
hoping to expand a bit more. But I don't know when it's quite gonna happen because it's very hard as a small business to add products. But
Right.
I'm really hoping to add more in regards to more of like postpartum fashion side of things. Before
Oh,
marketing, I had a background in fashion, and
gosh. What don't you do?
I know that people say that all the time. I'm like, you have so much. Like, what do you do? What don't you do? And I always joke, exercise, which isn't true. I
Yeah.
do exercise, but it's a funny joke. But yeah, I'm hoping to sort of expand the range to be a bit more clothing based as well. Because,
Right.
like, the truth is, the difficulty with our business is that because the products are really great quality, you buy the ab wrap once and you can use it for 3 pregnancies. So most of our
Right.
clients, we see them once. We don't often get repeat buyers
Right.
unless they're buying for their friends, or if they're starting in pregnancy and starting with our pregnancy support wrap, which is called the Bellies band, and then moving to the ab wrap. So that's a big challenge. Most other businesses can rely on repeat customers. We can't.
Hmm.
And so I'm hoping to sort of be able to move into more of a clothing side of things so that people
Hmm.
can be really comfortable in our clothes and then also have the healing side of it. But that's
Yeah.
sort of a big, goal over there. We'll see how
Right.
long that will take.
All right. So, for one last question, what advice would you give to new parents about postpartum recovery and self-care, for themselves?
I think start in pregnancy. So don't wait until you're in the thick of it in postpartum because your thoughts will not be functioning properly. So in pregnancy, start thinking now about who your people are because that's going to have the biggest effect. And by your people, I mean things like, do you know a local lactation consultant who you're going to be able to call on if you need help? A pelvic floor physical therapist, a postpartum doula if you're able to make that work, or who's your 3 a.m. friend? And I mean this because sometimes at 3 a.m., that's all we want is to be able to call our friend and just cry, but we won't ever bother them in their sleep. But if you pre-assign them and say, listen, can you be my 3 a.m. friend? Then it gives you that freedom to kind of just call them. And
Right.
ideally, you have a 3 a.m. friend who lives in like the UK or something, because then
Yeah.
this timing's a little bit
The
better.
timing works. Yeah.
But yeah, so like really do ask those friends now, like, will you be, that might be your neighbor. If I need something from the grocery store, would you be willing to get that for me? And really
Right.
gathering those names, gathering those numbers, those, emails, whatever it is, so that when you're in those moments, you don't have to feel like awkward or worried about like, how am I going to ask this person, because you've already done that in pregnancy.
Right.
And people mean it when they say they want to help. They mean it. So take them up on that offer. And then in regards to taking care of yourself, like really make sure that you come up with a plan regardless of how you birth on what your healing is going to look like. I think people get a bit shocked after they give birth of how much their body feels affected,
Hmm.
and know that it's very important to slow it down and to take your time. In 9 months to grow that baby, you're going to need more than 9 months to fully recover.
Hmm.
It takes a few years to be. I'm realistically, you're never going to be 100% the same as who you were before, emotionally or physically.
Right.
But to
No.
get to a point where you feel sort of normal can take a really long time for a lot of people. So don't push too hard. This is not the time to be like trying to break records or anything. This is really the time for you to be able to nurture and to slow. So much of our life is fast, 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 fast. Take this as a gift to be able to slow down, appreciate your baby and your family and this life that you've built, if you can. And I know, for a lot of the US moms, it's a little bit trickier because a lot of you have to go back to work so much earlier. But even more so, you have to make sure that your postpartum recovery is going well because you're having to go back to real life so much earlier. So if you're not thinking about it, you're going to feel really, really bad when you go back to work at 6 weeks, 8 weeks, whatever that is for some people.
Right. Well, that's great advice and a great way to end it. So that's going to bring us to the end of another episode of The Running Wine Mom. I hope you enjoyed learning about Samantha's journey, the amazing work of Bellies Inc. that is doing to support new parents, and the importance of prioritizing postpartum healing and self-care. Remember, whether you're a new parent or know someone who is, it is crucial to take time to rest, replenish, and restore after childbirth. Samantha's insights remind us that self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And as always, if you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it. You can follow me on Instagram at @therunningwinemom_. And Samantha, where can the listeners find you?
Easiest place is on our website, belliesinc.com, or of course on Instagram. That's just under Bellies Inc. We have lots of fun videos and information. So great space to learn a lot about pregnancy and postpartum.
That's great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers, and I will be back next Tuesday.